Sure, you have a podcast, but do you have a media brand? Let's explore the difference in this episode of Closing Time. Thanks for tuning into Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders. I'm Val Riley, head of marketing for Unbounce and Insightly. Today, I am joined by Ben Shapiro. He is founder and CEO of I Hear Everything. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Hey, Val. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Ben, I saw this figure and my jaw really dropped. Currently, there are more than 4.19 million podcasts available in the market.
Yeah. I actually thought you had some dental work done or something, but that makes a lot more sense. It is a jaw-dropping number, and I think that most of those are probably amateurs that are testing out the platform, and a lot of B2C, content. I don't know if it's quite 4 million real professional enterprise grade podcasts, and definitely not 4 million B2B podcasts. I still think that there's plenty of meat on the bone in the industry, but it's become easier and easier to technically create a podcast, which is great. It's good for the medium. It's good for people to experiment and get their content out there.
Got it. So let's say a brand comes to you and they say, I want a podcast. How do you respond to that?
I think of it a little bit like when somebody comes to you and they tell you they're going to be a parent. And when you've been a parent, apologies to the people here that don't have kids that are listening, but there's so much that goes into the process of raising a child that the thing that's actually going through my head is different than what I say. Hey, congratulations. That's really exciting. Good for you. In the back of my head, it's, do you have a car seat? Do you have a baby bag? Do you have a plan? Do you have childcare? Do you know how to breastfeed? Do you know what formula do you want? There's a million different things that you could think about, from everything from like the earliest step all the way through what maturity looks like. And by all means, in parenting and in podcasting, I don't know all of the answers. When somebody comes to me and says they want a podcast, I say, congratulations. That's really exciting. And I think the first thing that I try to do is urge them to think about who their audience is. Marketing 101, right? Know who you're talking to, but then also think about what the problems that they're trying to solve are, and then what's the right format to get the information to those people so it's interesting, so it's engaging, so it's educational. And if you can kind of master those three things, you got the beginning of a good podcast.
Let me probe there a little bit, because I know some folks are on the audio only bandwagon and some folks say audio and video, like Closing Time, is the way to go. What's your thought there?
I'm a big fan of Closing Time, the song and the podcast. I will refrain from singing the song for now. Can't promise I will continue to. But I was the audio only podcast guy for like 7 years. We started off doing the MarTech podcast. It was born out of my consulting practice, and then started doing podcasts for other people. And I was always high volume, good quality audio only podcast, because you want to have more swings at the bat, bites of the apple, and audio only podcast is a wonderful medium, and it's growing like a bat out of hell. I was wrong. Don't tell anybody. And this is honestly from having experience doing audio only podcasts, seeing other people that are producing video podcasts, and also understanding how the mediums are sort of being blended together, mostly because of YouTube. It's really the reason for the shift for my company to move from being podcast producers to building media brands, is this idea that a podcast is part of the mix, and you're leaving so much meat on the bone if you're going to put all the work into finding a great topic and finding somebody to have a conversation with and recording the content, that you should be putting it all of the places so people can experience that in the right format. And sometimes that can be tricky to figure out how to break those formats down, but to me, I think there is a higher calling. When people say podcast, they mean content or media. And if you're only putting it in the audio only channel, then you're really pigeonholing yourself. There's people that want to listen to podcasts in long format and short format with video, without. If you're going to produce the content, you should put it the places where people want to see it.
Got it. Then let's probe that a little bit, because with a media brand, it's beyond just the audio podcast, right? You're talking live stream, social content. Like what does that full list look like?
Yeah. I think that when you're talking about this sort of proliferation of content, when I define a media brand, really, I think about the content capture piece first. And you can use a live stream as a way to create a marketing event like you would a webinar with your content capture, right? What's the difference between a webinar and a live stream? The live stream has a connotation that it's a gamer sitting in his basement, but in reality, it's a marketing event that you're pre-promoting to tell somebody that they can engage with this conversation. So I like you do the live stream up at the top for the capture. Not everybody does that. We're recording this in advance right now. It's fine. But once you have the long format content and the full conversation, then you can break things down into your audio only format, your long format video. You can break them into segments, so kind of shorter form videos. And then there's your 1 minute social shorts. And out of the conversation you're having, you can also extract other types of content, like quotes that you can use for tweets, or blurbs that you could use for blog posts or newsletters. There's so much that you can get out of this conversation between two experts about a topic. It really is a media brand. It is using media to create content that spans the entire omni-channel marketing content landscape. That sounds like a big bowl of word salad. But basically, you can use pieces of these conversations to put them in whatever channel your audience is going to find them.
Got it. So let's talk about the types of companies you typically work with to create a media brand, and how those clients of yours, how do they measure success of their media brand?
Yeah. We generally work with B2B SaaS companies. And honestly, that's a factor of, I started as a marketing consultant, and then my consulting clients wanted us to build podcasts, and most of them were marketing and technology companies. So we have case studies there. We've done work in the education industry and a couple other places, but mostly it's B2B technology and SaaS companies, some service providers as well. But I think that the playbook of building a media brand is something that is really applicable the way that we do it to any business. But our marketing is kind of segmented towards places where we could talk to our success. I think probably more importantly is how do brands evaluate what is successful for a media brand. I'm a recovering consultant, so my answer is going to be, it depends, right? There is no one answer, in the same way that when you think about how is content useful for your brand, or how is media useful for your brand, it depends what you're trying to accomplish. Now, I don't want to be overly vague, and I think that you can accomplish top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel activities using a media brand. And I'll give you an example: an ABM strategy for top of funnel. You build a podcast that is very segmented towards your specific ICP. I'm having a conversation with a dental practice podcast next week. They're trying to meet dental practitioners. So great. We're going to use that podcast as a way for them to meet new dentists. And that's their ABM strategy. That's how it's the tip of their spear. It's how they have their conversations. And you need to have authority and trust and appear credible to attract the type of guests that you want. So top of funnel ABM strategy. Middle of funnel nurture. You're using your podcast as a way to continually stay in front of and present content to your audience, either by getting them to be your followers or subscribers, or pushing the content out to them through things like your newsletter. And then your bottom of funnel tactics, right? Having calls to action in the content for how people can engage with you. We have a practice where we can retarget the people that are listening to podcasts. So you can blend in your sort of your brand activities with some of your PPC. There's different ways where you can use your content to basically have a call to action and then push it through other channels where you know you have an existing audience. Like, here's something that is a great piece of sales content that I recorded, and I'm going to push it through my LinkedIn channel, and people are going to engage with it because they like my LinkedIn post. So there is no one size fits all evaluation. Top of funnel might be who am I interviewing? Middle of funnel might be content volume, distribution, downloads. Bottom of funnel, you're looking at sales and conversions. So it's kind of all of the things.
Got it. So what do you say to the people who the I can do it myself people, right? I've got a microphone and that's all I'm going to need to be successful in the podcasting universe.
Good luck. It's not that you can't. I started there. My first podcast, which was a little bit of an art project, I met a Lyft driver who defected from North Korea. And as he was driving me from San Francisco to one part of San Francisco to the next, he was telling me his story. And I said, that's an amazing story. Do you want me to record it and turn it into a podcast? I'd never recorded anything in my life. And he said, yes. And he showed up at my doorstep the next day. I had to go buy 2 microphones and it became a podcast, and I marketed it and it was relatively successful. It's not that you can't do it on your own. It's that you, for a business practice, probably don't want to, for a couple different reasons. Most of the time, what people do when they're recording and editing and producing their own content is they do it in the wrong format. They don't really have a good sense of how to tell the story, the beginning, the middle, the end, right? They need a producer to help them figure out how to make what they're trying to say interesting and also understand the format and the medium that it's going into. So there's that sort of like, what are we going to say piece, which you might want some professional help with. But maybe you're a great storyteller and you can do that on your own. Then there's the capturing piece. And are we going to get high enough quality audio to make us sound good so people don't think that we're amateurs and destroy our credibility by having a subpar product? Well, okay, you probably want some help there. Then there's the just sheer death by 1,000 cuts workload of like going through the content, editing it. Yeah, you can put your content into Descript and you could edit out the oohs and ums and ahs. It's just going to take you 3 hours. And that's probably time where you're better spent finding a great editor and spending your $15 to $20 an hour having a professional do it. And then it gets down to the end where you're like, all right, now I have this piece of content. How am I going to evaluate it? How am I going to publish it? How am I going to promote it? How am I going to distribute it? Do I need to break it into video? Do I need to break that video into social shorts? There's a lot of work that goes into making a commercially viable marketing asset, not just recording yourself on a Zoom call. And there is a difference between I want it to be simple, so I'm just going to record my conference calls, and having a thoughtful experience, which then leads to a clear, concise piece of content, which people hear as simple.
I would say the next step after all of that very difficult labor you just described is now how do I continue to grow my audience, right?
Yes. Yeah. The distribution piece is always overlooked. I think that there's kind of 4 channels or 4 things to think about when you're building a media brand. And this is just kind of content advice in general. The 4 things you need to consider are viral, organic, paid, and partnerships. Right? Virality is having your content being shared. And most of the time, mostly with podcasts or sort of creator type content, the audience shares a little bit. Most of the time where you're getting that actual growth is who you're talking to, who your guests are on the audience. Mostly if you're doing an interview, are they going to share it? Do they have an audience that's relevant to my audience? So finding the right people to participate in your show is a great way to get virality. And then, there will be some sharing. It doesn't matter how many times you say like and subscribe or share the content with your friends. People are going to make that decision on their own. Organic growth is how much content are you publishing, and are you putting the words into the algorithm that match what people are searching for? And do you have the credibility to be one of the top ranking results? There is such thing as SEO for podcasts. Nobody's really mastered the algorithm yet, but it is a true thing that if you put in more content and people start sharing and liking that content and listening, then you'll be boosted in Apple and Spotify's algorithm. Paid is probably the most underrated part of an organic growth strategy, which is building a podcast, there's wonderful tools out there that will help you build and seed your audience. Just to list a few, my favorites, Mopod. They're great for basically getting the either downloads or followers and getting some interaction from the people that are listening to the podcast. If you're just starting out, wonderful. Other tools that people use are Podroll. I think Amaze Labs is another one. There's a whole suite of tools, LinkedIn, Facebook, where you can market your content to try to get that initial audience to get the ball rolling, right? Get the snowball going down the hill, and hopefully if your content's good enough, you pick up some steam. And the last one's partnerships. Val, you've been on my podcast. I've been on yours. Let's call this the partnership. Ways where you can distribute your content in other channels, other sources, with other distribution, using the relationships that you have to really get it in front of the right people.
So I'm going to reflect back to you as this nearing the end of our conversation, because I feel like what you're saying is like media is a channel that marketers need to be using, just like other channels we have in our marketing mix. Would you say that's accurate?
The thing I'll push back on is the word channel.
Okay.
Media is a tool, right? Just like creative is a tool.
Okay.
Right. Your imagery is a tool. If you are going to create media, sometimes it's earned, sometimes it's owned, right? It might be in your channel or somebody else's. You need to think about what it's for, what channel it is going to, and is it the right match for that medium? And does it answer someone's problems? So, it goes back to fundamentally, what are you trying to achieve? Like I said before, when somebody says, hey, you're going to create a podcast, who's the audience? What do they need? What are you trying to get out of them? What's the experience that would resonate with them? Like, if you don't have those answers, then you're just publishing stuff for publishing stuff, and you're doing all of this work and putting it out there and hoping. If you know what your audience wants and you know what channel they're in and you have access to them so you can share your content and you can really nail answering the questions that they have, you've got a much higher chance of success with whatever your outcome is, whether it's top of funnel, middle, or bottom. But if you're going at it blind because your CEO says, we need a podcast because those are popular, the president and the non-president, they're all getting on the podcast, let's all do those. You haven't thought through the real media strategy. And, that's honestly a recipe for spending a lot of time and a lot of budget and not getting a lot of value out of it. So it's something that can be incredibly impactful, but you need to know what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish most of all.
Well, Ben, thank you for appearing with me on one of the 4.19 million podcasts that are out in the market today.
With the name of one of my favorite songs.
Nice.
So there you go. I won't sing.
Appreciate that. Thanks to Ben for joining us today. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. Sign up for the Closing Time newsletter. Get this show delivered right to your inbox. See, we follow Ben's advice right here. You'll also find clips of this podcast on Insightly's social channels. So click the link in the show notes right now if you want to get that email, and we will see you next week on Closing Time.
I know who I want to take me home.